Hey there, good evening and welcome to Prog Monster. My name is Murph and I am the host of this show. This is a show that is dedicated to progressive rock, hard rock, heavy metal, and other forms of rock music. Excuse me. So this is our Wednesday night favorites show. I'm doing a two-parter now. I wasn't sure how many parts I was going to do because I wasn't sure how many of these I had. So I'm going to give you a list of my master albums, my master album collection, and I'm going to do it from my favorite master album right down to my least favorite. And I have to say, other than the top 10, a lot of these albums are this is one of the hardest lists I've ever done. Because, so many of these albums on a given day could move up 10, 12 spots, but the top 10 have been pretty consistently in the top 10, at least for the past half decade or so. Yeah, there's been a little bit of movement here and there, but pretty much the same. So what I'm going to do is, because there's actually 48 of these albums, 48 of them, so I'm going to split it in two. We'll do 24 from 48 to 25 today, and then next week we'll do the first part, which will have the top 24. So there's also there was 4 albums I added. I had about 14 albums here on a kind of review list to see if they deserve to be part of the master albums. There was a bunch of them that I had known that I wasn't sure I wanted to make a master album or not, so I kind of reviewed them all, and there was 14 of them, and I gave 4 of them master status. It probably was, I originally only wanted to go with 3 more, but the other album it deserved to be there, so I had to give it to it, and that's the way I am. I like things to be where they're supposed to be. Okay, so we'll start by giving you my top, and of course I've got the stacks backwards here. Sorry. Okay, now we're better. We got them all where they're supposed to be. So we're going to give you the top, or the bottom 24 first today, and then next week I will give you the top 24. The bottom 24 though is a great group of albums. In the top 24 is even better. So you're going to see a lot of albums, repeat albums from, well, the albums won't be repeat, but the groups will repeat. A lot of groups have more than, well, there's at least three groups that I can think of. 3 or 4 of my groups have over 4 or 5 albums on this list because they're my favorite groups, and it's just a matter of that's going to happen, right? Okay, so we'll start by giving you the 4 that I added to the list first. So they'll be 48, 47, 46, 45. So coming in at number 48, and just so you know, if you're not sure how I come to the determination of my master albums, I put out a video that explains how I determine what level my albums are at. If you want to watch that, that's fine. It'll be under, I think, explanations or answers or whatever you want to call it. But at any rate, we're going to start out with the number 48 album. This is their only master album, coming from this group, Iron Maiden. This is The Number of the Beast. I wasn't going to include this just because I didn't really want to have more than 3 master albums labeled, but I don't know how you can't include this. Every song on this album is just fantastic. I love every song on this album. Just some great stuff on here. 22 Acacia. I should have had my glasses, and I'm not sure where. Oh, here they are. Just give me a second. I'm gonna need them for this. So we have The Number of the Beast. This is an album I discovered back almost right after it came out. It put Iron Maiden on the map for me. It put the new English new wave of heavy metal on the map. So this has Children of the Damned, really good song. 22 Acacia Avenue, The Number of the Beast, Run to the Hills, and then of course Hallowed Be Thy Name, which I think is probably my favorite track by them. If it's not my favorite track, it's pretty damn close. So there you go, Iron Maiden's Number of the Beast coming in at number 48. So number 47, also their only album on the list, and they also just got put on, but they were, I felt like of all the albums, I think this album might not have made it if I'd done this a few months ago, but I had to put it on because the group has done so well with some of their older stuff that I started to collect again. But this album was huge for me when it came out. Still has a lot. It's burned out a lot because I played it a lot. But talking about AC/DC's Back in Black, just such a fantastic album. I mean, my favorite on here is Shoot to Thrill right now, but you know that could change. There's been a few others. At one time, Back in Black was my favorite. Have a Drink on Me. I love that song quite a bit. Where's the other one? Give Me the Dog a Bone. Yeah, all these songs are just fantastic album, right? Back in Black by AC/DC coming in at number 47. So another of the albums I recently added is this one. I've had this album now for, I want to say, about maybe 16, 17 years. When I first got it, I had already had one of their albums that I was just starting to get into them, and I saw this and I bought it, and it became my favorite album by them, and I still like it a lot. I actually heard it in the record store when I went last time, just so good, and they have such a good stereo system. I stayed there for the entire album. This is Animals by Pink Floyd, and maybe I've been a little bit influenced by that trip there and memories of the album, but I think it's deserving of master status. So it's my first and only Pink Floyd album on the master status. So all three of those are first and only albums for those groups. The next one was the last of the oh wait a minute, something didn't quite go right here. Oh no, I'm right, I got it, sorry. There's a sticker on my board and it kind of threw me for a minute. So anyways, the next album up, coming in at number 45, the only one for this group. This is an album I played a lot when it first came out. I still like this album a lot. It hasn't really burned out for me. There's some of the deeper tracks have really come to the forefront with me, and the ones that I played a lot early on aren't getting as much attention as they used to. It's the Eagles, The Long Run. Like originally, I always listened to Teenage Jail. I listened to Heartache Tonight, which a lot of people did. And The Long Run. Those were the big songs for me when this first came out. Now and Sad Cafe, of course, too. Now it's pretty much Those Shoes, King of Hollywood. I Can't Tell You Why. I love all those tracks now a lot. This is a really strong album. Not really any bad songs on this album at all. I've been looking through it. Yeah, there's nothing on here. I'm not a big fan of the Greeks Don't Want No Freaks. It's a little bit kind of weird, but it's not a bad song. So there's no bad tracks on here, and you'll find that's common with all of these albums you're gonna see. None of them have really bad tracks on them. There's a couple that have songs that I don't listen to as much too. So then we come to the first album that was going to be on this master list until I added those four. This is also an album, one-off album. It's the only album by the group on here. It's been one of my favorite albums since I first got it. That's going back to like the late 70s. I had it in album form. It was one of the first CDs I bought as well. We're talking about Some Girls by the Rolling Stones. Such a good album. Like, every track on here is killer. You know, just killer. Just my imagination. And then you got Beast of Burden, Some Girls, title track. There's one, I think it's called When the Whip Comes Down. I don't see it here. Respectable, another really good track. Miss You. Yeah, When the Whip Comes Down, really great song. Faraway Eyes, that was kind of the comedy song, but really good. And then, of course, the legendary Shattered. Yeah, and Beast of Burden's on here too. Like, it's just one great track after another. And the album's a little bit weird, but you can see all their faces in those faces. But such a good song, such a good Stones, and I'm sure they've got better albums in the 60s too, but for some reason this was the one I started with, and it's had a place for me. I've owned a couple of other Stones albums, Emotional Rescue and Tattoo You, but I owned them in album form, so I've never replaced them, but this one I did right away because it's one of my favorite albums. Okay, so then we get to number 43. This is a kind of a compilation. I don't know how to describe it. It's a two disc set. It's called the Greatest Hits, but there's some live tracks on here too. And it was the first album I had from them for the longest time, and I love the entire album. I played it all the time. Especially like the live stuff on here quite a bit, and that's Heart's Greatest Hits. This is a nice shot of the whole group there too. Just such a good album, and I think this really is the first. Like, for me, this was the first real album to bring Ann Wilson to the front. I knew she was a good singer from her other albums and from the studio stuff that you used to hear on the radio, but this album really shows the vocal talents that this woman has. She's just extraordinary. Yeah, so Heart's Greatest Hits coming in at, what did I say? Number 43. So then we have number 42, the first one on this list from one of my group of 8. So it's the bottom album from my group of 8, and they have 30 albums on here, and this is number 30, but it's still such a fantastic album. And this is, of course, Black Sabbath, Volume 4. This is a really good album. I don't think the production is so great on here. It sounds kind of hazy, but the songs are so memorable, like such good stuff on here. I think with this album, though, there's a few of them you'll see like this, that you've got a lot of really strong tracks and then some kind of bottom feeders, but strong ones are like, there's a lot of them. Usually what I get is a fair number of really good tracks and not really much bad or super greats. That's a common trend with me, but this one isn't one of them. Wheels of Confusion, Tomorrow's Dream, Supernaut, Snowblind, Cornucopia, and I even like the acoustic Laguna Sunrise. All these tracks are fantastic. Changes, that's okay, I don't mind it. Under the Sun, Every Day Comes and Goes, just those are good. They're okay, but they're not really all that memorable. And then this small funny bit called FX, not that bad. Wheels of Confusion or The Straightener, these are just like, that's such a great way to start the album. This is a great album. I've done a look back on this album if you want to look it up. It's really fantastic. Yeah, Volume 4 by Black Sabbath coming in at number 42. So now moving right on up, we get to number 41. One of my favorite musicians. Not really well represented it here on my master albums. Probably should have a couple more, but he has quite a few albums I've bought recently that I've been listening to, and a lot of them are really good, so I can see a day when he might saturate the market a bit. But anyways, this album always had a great place for me. Harvest, Neil Young, coming in at 41. Love almost all the tracks on here. This is almost the perfect album. the main tracks I really like a lot. Harvest, of course. A Man Needs a Maid, that's one of my favorites on here. Are You Ready for the Country? Great tune. Old Man, of course. How could you not have that in there? And The Needle and the Damage Done. Those are probably my favorite tracks on this album. There are some of the other ones that I didn't mention. Some of them are a little bit weaker, but they're not bad. There's no real bad tracks on this album at all either. So there you have it. Neil Young's Harvest. Coming in at number 41. So number 40, another Black Sabbath album. You're going to see quite a bit of them here. This album could have been higher. At points in my history, it has been much higher. Haven't been listening to it as much because so much new stuff to listen to. But another killer album, Sabbath Bloody Sabbath. I just love that artwork. It's fantastic, you know. And I think the back of the album is all in blue, and then the front is all in red. Yeah, just such a great album, you know. Maybe Sabbath's original group, the original Sabbath, this may have been their final swan song album of great albums. Sabbath Bloody Sabbath, of course, such killer bass in that. I love the National Acrobat, such a great song. Sabracadabra, the one that features Rick Wakeman on keyboards. And then the heaviest song on the album, and probably one of my favorite Sabbath songs of all time, Killing Yourself to Live. And it's got some other stuff here, it's not too bad. Looking for Today, I don't mind that. Spiral Architect's pretty good too. Yeah, this is a pretty solid album by Sabbath standards even. Okay, now we're moving on. This will be the first one in the 30s. Number 39. Also a collection of greatest hits. I don't own any of their original albums, but this album is so strong that I've now begun to start to think about collecting some of their older stuff as well. But they're not as easy to find. But this has a lot of really, really great songs on it. And we're talking about Simon and Garfunkel's greatest hits here. You know, like everything you can. If you're just starting out to listen to these guys, this album has so many good songs. Mrs. Robinson, the 59th Street Bridge song, I like that one. The Sound of Silence, of course. Scarborough Fair, Homeward Bound, Bridge Over Troubled Water. Yeah, just the list is endless. And then, of course, Cecilia, which I think is their best song, ending off the album. So just a great album, Simon and Garfunkel. Coming in at number 39. Now we're starting to move up a little bit. Number 38. This album probably, it's only been a master album for me, surprisingly, for maybe a year or so. I did play it a lot, and then it kind of faded a lot. But it came back and has been very strong with me since then. And that's Aqualung. Do I really need to say much about this album? If you're a Jethro Tull fan at all, you know how good this is. If you're not a Jethro Tull fan, you probably know of this album. It's probably their most famous album. And it's got Aqualung, Cross-Eyed Mary, Mother Goose, which is a killer track. Wondering aloud how the years turn to snow. Such a great track too. My God, of course. Locomotive Breath. If you don't know much about Jethro Tull, you probably know that song anyways. Gotta know that one. Wind Up. There's a couple versions of that here. And this one actually has a couple bonus tracks on it, including Fat Man, which is on here quite a bit. Fat Man, which is not originally on this album, but is on this one. And Beret as well. So they just added a few tracks to this album. Okay, so next up, that was number 38, Aqualung, Jethro Tull. Number 37, I had a bit of confusion because I had written number 36 twice for these two albums. And I knew because this album was the only one that wasn't in my stack, so I had to go back in, look up, and that's what had happened. I had put 2 of them at 36, but this one should have been 37, so I backed everybody up. So we're talking about Nursery Crime by Genesis. Such a good album. Probably after, because I started out listening to Genesis with Wind and the Wuthering and Trick of the Tail. Those were the first 2 I had, and for a while they were the only 2 I listened to. This one didn't come along until the turn of the century. Can you believe it? Not until, and I'd had it in the cupboard for 12 or 13 years, along with some of the other ones too, like a lot of the Gabriel stuff. So I never really listened to any of the Gabriel stuff until the turn of the century. And this was the first one I started listening to because it was the first of the ones that I had. I didn't get Trespass till much later. But anyways, such a good album. The Giant Hogweed is one of my favorite Genesis songs. I'm going to say it was the song that probably established Peter Gabriel and Genesis with me, Giant Hogweed. The music box was pretty close, though. It came on just around the same time. And, Seven Stones is good. Harold the Barrel is funny. And, of course, the legendary Fountain of Salmis, Fountain of Salmis, which is just very underrated, but great Genesis song. So this is a very strong album. There's really not no really weak tracks on here. Some that aren't maybe as strong, but Harlequin I like too. I forgot to mention that. Yeah, so it's just such a strong album. Okay, so now we're going to move to the other number 36, which was supposed to be number 36. An album that's probably fallen for me. Probably was in the top 20 at one time, but just severe burnout. And just kind of drifted away from it a bit. I think it gets a lot. Sometimes what happens to albums that I like quite a bit, they get way too much airplay, and it just really burns out the album. I'm sorry, I'm nodding off here. I don't know why, but anyways, and we're talking about Styx's Grand Illusion. This is a masterpiece. Even like forever it's been a masterpiece. Even when I first got it, almost was a masterpiece. The Grand Illusion is probably my favorite song on this album. I love to sing it. It's just a perfect song for that. Not the last song, but the 6th and 7th tracks, which are Man in the Wilderness and Castle Walls, are both the proggiest stuff they did, I think. I'm pretty sure that's the way I see it. Come Sail Away is really, really overplayed, but still a great tune. Fooling Yourself, The Angry Young Man, great track by Tommy Shaw, one of his first, I think it's his first on the album. And of course, Jay Wise's Miss America. Superstars is good too. There's no, like I said, there's no real bad tunes on this. Just some are much better than others. So The Grand Illusion, probably a better album than its ranking, but Burnout will do that after a while. So there you have the first 12. I was going to say let's pause for station identification, but I won't. I hope I can stay awake from this. I don't know why. I'm always really tired right after work. Especially, usually I take the bike home, but today my foot was bothering me, so I got a ride. So now we're moving on up here. Grand Illusion was number 36. So number 35 is a live album, one of 2. I think, yeah. One of 2 fully live albums, and it's a master. There's very few albums as good as this, studio or otherwise. Live It Leads by The Who. This is the album that put The Who on the map for me. And this particular version, like there's all kinds of different versions of this. The original version only had 8 tracks on it. This one, I believe, I count 14 tracks, but there's some as many as 22, 23 tracks on the album. But it's got all the ones you want. Heaven and Hell, I Can't Explain, one of their great tunes. Fortune Teller's here, Tattoo, Young Man Blues, Substitute, really great song. Happy Jack, one of my favorites. I'm a Boy, one of their funniest tunes, I think. A Quick One While He's Away, that's their kind of mini opera. It's just, this one I have on a couple of my discs of them doing. Summertime Blues and Shakin' All Over, the two covers they did, really great. And then, it ends off with My Generation and Magic Bus, which are two of their really big classics. And the thing that makes this album so good is that it's the Who at their best. They're live. They're so much better live than they are studio. And the studio albums are not bad, but they're just so much better live. Okay, so that's the Who's Live at Leeds, number 35. Number 34 and 33 are from the same group, both albums. So I'm going to kind of deal with them as a single entity here. I like them both for different reasons. One of them, this one was the first of this group that I owned. Sorry, I just can't help it today. It's very different. It's the first Yes album I ever owned. I thought, wow, this is really good, but it's really different, right? And when I started collecting their other stuff, I began to realize how different this is from their other stuff. I thought this was going to be the standard by which Yes was, but it's very different. I think it's a heavier album. It's got some great artwork, of course. All 6 tracks on here I like a lot. Like, there's no weak sister. They're all really good. Tempest Fugit and Does It Really Happen are probably my 2 favorite. But the rest, Into the Lens, Machine Messiah, A Man in a White Car, and Run Through the Light, all really good tracks. There's no bad tracks on this. So, and they're heavy. Like, the guitar and bass are real dominating on this album, more so than any other Yes album, I think, because you don't have your keyboards. The keyboards aren't. Well, you have Jeff Downes, and he's a good keyboardist, but he's not the same as Rick Wakeman. He's not as overpowering. So, yeah, really great album. So that comes in at number 34, followed closely by its sister. The album that came out just before it, Tomato. Tomato, you say tomato, I say tomato, whatever. Tormato, I guess is what it is. Kind of a strange cover, like throwing a tomato at an album. It's kind of weird. There's a lot of quirkiness to this album, but the music is really good. Now, I've listened to people say this album is very thin. The production's not great. It sounds scattered. It's a collection of angry young men, whatever you want to call it. But I don't feel that way about the album, because when I bought this album and was listening to it, I didn't know that the group was broken up. I didn't know this was the album that they broke up on. I just like the music. And they've got a lot of really solid tracks on this album. Some of their best stuff is on this track. Is there any song on any of their albums that could blow away on the Silent Wings of Freedom? That's one of their best tracks. Or arguably, I think it's right up there as one of their best tracks. Onward's pretty solid. Now, I'm a big fan of Circus of Heaven. I know this takes excuse the term, shit kicking from people because they don't like it. They think it should be on one of John Anderson's solo albums, and maybe it should, but I happen to like it quite a bit. I really like his vocal range on this song a lot. Same with Arriving USO. This one takes a bit of a shit kicking sometimes too, but I really like the kind of bouncy guitar playing that they do on this particular song. And it's got like Release with the little drum bit in there. It's pretty solid. Don't Kill the Whale, Rejoice, and Future Times are all solid tracks. So to me, this is a very solid album. It's not as flashy. It's kind of different. The sounds are different. Like all the songs are a little bit different. They're not. They don't all kind of sound the same. So there's some heavy ones, some soft ones, some out there like tracks that don't really fit with each other. But that's, I guess, why people think it's a kind of a mixed up, scratchy album, or not scratchy, but scattered album. But I think they all flow pretty good, and I found it interesting because all the songs I liked. So, anyways, Tormato coming in at number 33. Okay, number 32, an album I have not done a album review on, but, or maybe I have. I might have done a review on this one. It's the other one I didn't. This is the first of two for this group for me. When this first came out, I loved it. I love all the tracks on it. I used to play it all the time. It's very different than the type of music that I would have listened to back then, but for some reason it opened my mind to the possibilities of different types of music. Gone Hollywood, The Logical Song, Goodbye Stranger, Breakfast in America. Great tracks, all of them. Take the Long Way Home fits in there too. The last three, Child of Vision, I like the best of the last three, and then Lord Is It Mine is probably my favorite track on this album. But the album is very solid from top to bottom. There's no real bad songs, and there's quite a few really strong songs too. So there you go, Breakfast in America. So next up, Breakfast in America was number 32. Number 31. It's an album I did a cover. I did a look back at a classic rock album on it recently as a cover for a mess up I did. They were talking about Wind and the Wuthering. It was my first Genesis album. One of my favorites. It's got some really interesting sound. This is still very proggy. It's the last album with Steve Hackett. Unfortunately, that kind of changed everything for them. I think he was kind of saddened or upset because he didn't get as much material, but I mean, I guess now they could have gave him 2 or 3 more songs and maybe he would have stayed, but back then you only had so much room on an album and his songs got cut. But the one he does do on here, Blood on the Rooftops, is great. It's a great track, just a fantastic track. 11th Earl of Mar, One for the Vine, All in a Moses Night, Afterglow, and where is it? Oh, yeah, I'm looking for it. Oh yeah, The One Special Way is, to me, that's the beginning. That's where it started with that song, where they started moving towards a commercial sound. And you know what, I think it's probably some of the guys thinking, you know, like we should be able to make some money if we could do this, because Phil Collins has that kind of really great voice. Let's see if we can exploit that a bit. And the song isn't a bad song, but it's probably the weakest one on the album. But it started something, because on the next album they went much further, and then on the album after that they really went far. So Wind and the Wuthering, one of my favorites. Okay, next up, Wind and the Wuthering was 31. So number 30 is this album, one of the great debuts of its time, if not the greatest debut of all time. Funny story about this one, and some of you will have heard this if they've seen me review this album, is that I had to ask my parents for Kiss Destroyer for Christmas. That's the album I wanted. And then I saw there was an album on a gift under the tree that clearly was an album. I thought, oh, they got it. I was so excited, and then I opened it and it was this. I didn't even know what this was, but so upset by it was that I threw the album in the closet, and it stayed there until sometime in the 80s, unwrapped for like almost 5-6 years. It was in that closet unwrapped. And then one day I said, oh, I still got this thing. I remember how disappointed I was, but I'd heard some of the tracks on the radio, but I thought, oh, this is not bad actually. So I opened it, and now Destroyer is nowhere to be found on this list, but this album is here. So there's you go, the Rags to Riches story. Just such a good album, like so many good songs on it, you know, and such an awesome sound to it too. So there you go, Boston's debut album. Coming in at number 29, an album that became the first big album for this group from me, and has remained as my favorite for them, and that's The Who. Who's Next? The Who does not have a lot of masterpiece albums for me. The reason The Who's up in my group of 8 has a lot more to do with them as individuals and their live performance, and I have lots of concerts of them on. And so I'm largely drawn to The Who by their antics and their live stuff, not so much by their studio albums, which are okay, but they only have the one master really. It's the only one I have. The live one, it doesn't count because it's the big one, right? So there you go. So Bubba O'Reilly, great song, one of the best Who songs of all time. My Wife Is Good. And I'm just going to put my glasses on because I can't see that last part. Getting in Tune and Going Mobile and Behind Blue Eyes. Great. And then it ends off with that Won't Get Fooled Again, which is maybe one of the greatest hard rock songs of all time. So there you have it. The Who, Who's Next? That was number 29. So number 28 is another, probably the pinnacle album of this group as well, but not nearly my favorite of them. And it's kind of a really weird cover, but the music's great on it. We're talking about Paranoid by Black Sabbath. It's like songs like War Pigs and Fairies Wear Boots and Hand of Doom. Like, it's just such a fantastic album. It's pretty heavy too, but very different than a lot of normal heavy stuff. Yeah, great album, Black Sabbath, Paranoid. So we're getting down. We've got 4 more in the first half of this series, this 2-parter, and we're coming back with Supertramp again. This time, Crime of the Century. Now, Breakfast in America was the first one I owned, and I loved it a lot. This one is a much better quality album, I think. I wouldn't say song-wise, but that one's a little more commercial sounding. This one isn't nearly as commercial sounding, but you know, it's got Dreamers on here, so that's a little bit on the commercial side. But then you got School, Bloody Well Right, Hide in Your Shell, Asylum, Rudy, If Everyone Was Listening, and Crime of the Century. Like, they're just great tunes and really well put together, this album. I like the structure of it all. I like the real distinguishable voices. The sound is fantastic. Yeah, Crime of the Century, Supertramp. And that was the number 27. 3 more to go on this. Or 2 more? 3 more. 3 more to go here. Actually, I think, yeah, it's just 2. I got this one on the wrong stack. I'll put it over here for next time. So we have 2 more to go for this stack. So the first one is from my favorite band, Rush. Is this my first Rush one? I think it is. Yeah, this is my first Rush album so far today, but it's not the first. It won't be the only one, Rush. But this is a great album. I know it takes a bit of a whacking. People say the production is not great. It's kind of choppy. It's heavy in some periods and kind of almost mystical in other places. The vocals aren't great. They say lots of things they say about it, but I love this album. I love everything about it, even the cover of the Necromancer there. I love all the tracks on here except for I'm Going Bald, which I think was kind of parody on Gene Simmons' I'm Going Blind. They're just kind of making fun of him for it. because this was around the time when they were touring with Kiss as their backup band, and I guess that song kind of struck them as funny, so they write "I'm Going Bald." You have the side length epic in Fountain of Lameth, which of the 20 or 18 or 20 plus minute songs that they put out, this is, I think, the best one. It may not be the best sounding one, it may not be the most bombastic one, it may not be the one that the masses loved, but for me it's my favorite of them. It has a lot of intricacies that I like quite a bit. So we're going with Rush, Caress of Steel in the 26th spot. And then the last one for this episode, coming in at 25, will be Genesis, Foxtrot. This is a really, really strong album. Nursery Crime was a very good master album with a lot of really good stuff. This is even better. It's got Watchers of the Skies, Get 'Em Out by Friday, Can Utility and the Coastliners, which is one of the most underrated songs in my discography. It's also one of the best deep cuts by Genesis. Horizons, that little acoustic bit, classical bit by Steve Hackett. And they should have utilized him a lot more than they did, I think. And then, of course, the epic, sidelong epic of mega proportions, right up there amongst the very best long songs. Yeah, it's right up there. There's maybe a couple of songs that are this length that I like more than it. And I won't get into that because I'll be giving stuff away, but I love Supper's Ready. I love the version that's done here on the album quite a bit, and I like Phil Collins' live take on it as well. Yeah, it's just such a good album. Like, from top to bottom, this is a huge album. Even the cover is kind of interesting with the shark and the fox in the dress, so I guess that's supposed to represent Peter Gabriel there. So anyways, there you have it. My top, my first 24, part A of my, I don't even know if I gave this a title. Okay, so I have 48 master albums. So this is my 48 master albums ranked in put together in rank from first to 48th, and we've done the bottom half today, and next week we will finish with the top half. So Foxtrot is number 25. Such a good album. If you're trying to get aboard on old Genesis, this is a good place to start, because most of you have probably heard some of Supper's Ready and maybe Watchers of the Sky a little bit too. Such a good album. Like two of the best tracks by them are on one album. Fantastic. So that takes care of the first half of this series. I'm going to just reiterate them again, so that in case you came in late, you didn't hear them all, or you just wanted to make some notes or whatever you want to do, I'll just go through them again. So we have the Genesis Foxtrot, number 25. Rush's Caress of Steel, number 26. Supertramp, Crime of the Century, number 27. Paranoid by Black Sabbath, number 28. Who's Next by The Who, number 29. Boston's debut album, coming in at number 30. Wind in the Wuthering at number 31. Breakfast in America, number 32. Tormato, number 33. Drama, number 34. And Live at Leeds, number 35. Just grab the other stack. Just give me a second. That's 35. Number 36, Styx's Grand Illusion. Number 37, Genesis Nursery Crime. Then Jethro Tull, number 38, Aqualung. Number 39, Greatest Hits Volume from Simon and Garfunkel. Fantastic. Number 40, Sabbath Bloody Sabbath by Black Sabbath. Number 41, Harvest by Neil Young. Number 42, Volume 4 by Black Sabbath. Number 33, Greatest Hits and the live parts of Heart. That's number, where was I? That was number 33. Yeah, number 33. Number 34, that was number 43. This is number 44. The Rolling Stones, Some Girls. Number 45. The Long Run by the Eagles. Number 46. Animals by Pink Floyd. Number 47. Back in Black by the AC/DC. Look at that. That's so cool, eh? And number 48, the last on the list, Iron Maiden's Number of the Beast. So I hope you like this part A. I know it's gone on a bit long. Good thing I didn't do the whole thing. I will never get it done. So anyways, we'll be doing, next Wednesday, we'll be doing the second part, which will be the top 24 master albums of all time, my favorites. And I hope that you will come in and watch that one as well. And hopefully I won't be as tired as I am today. So I hope you have a good evening, and we will see you again soon. Prog Monster out. Bye.